The company's employees, like ghosts, glided past him in a labyrinth of cubicles, their eyes fixed on screens. They saw only a broom, a cart, and a frayed name badge, never the man who stood behind them. Then, one day, his place was challenged, and in that moment, a silence fell that echoed throughout the office, exposing a collective and profound mistake. The wind that howled around the skyscraper, Leo Castro only felt in the elevator, a frigid rush when the doors opened on his floor. Otherwise, his world was quiet, stuffy, and smelled of lemon-scented cleaner. He was invisible, not in a figurative sense, but in the most literal. People in expensive suits would glide past him without a glance, as if he were just another piece of the office furniture, like a trash bin or a potted plant. His eyes, gray and observant, would follow them from around a corner, but no one ever bothered to meet his gaze. His days were as monotonous as the ticking of a broken clock. He swept up crumbs, wiped away coffee stains, refilled printer paper, all with a quiet, almost meditative focus. Behind this unremarkable facade lay a bitter irony. He worked at Argotech, one of the most celebrated software development companies in New York. He would pass by offices where people scribbled complex algorithms and diagrams on whiteboards, and each time, something inside him would tighten. No one knew that late at night, in his tiny apartment in Queens, he would deconstruct those very algorithms, teaching himself Python from library books and writing his own code, far more elegant than what he often saw. He dreamed of a chance, but for now, his only access was the internet. Sometimes, the invisibility broke with small, sharp jabs. A sigh as he passed, a glance that lingered on his worn-out boots, on his service uniform, on his darker skin. People rarely said please or thank you. More often it was just a curt, "Can you take the trash?" or a condescending, "We'll get it from here." These little moments of casual dismissal fueled a weary heat deep inside him. He felt the weight of stereotypes. He was just the help, a background character whose only purpose was to service the main players. He was not a coder, a thinker, or an innovator. He was simply Leo, the janitor. The office was a kingdom of cubicles ruled by unspoken hierarchy. One particular prince of that kingdom was a senior engineer named Marcus Thorne, a man whose laugh was as loud and careless as his expensive cologne. One afternoon, as Leo was meticulously mopping a spill in the cafeteria, Marcus and a group of his colleagues burst in, boisterous and animated, celebrating the launch of a new product feature. Marcus didn't see Leo's quiet work. He saw an obstacle. "Just leave it, buddy," Marcus said with a dismissive wave, his voice dripping with condescension. "That's a job for someone, well, someone who knows their place." His friends chuckled. One of them pulled out a phone, a smirk on their face, and aimed the camera at Leo, as if the moment was meant to be a punchline. The sound of their laughter, a jarring cacophony in the quiet cafeteria, felt like a physical blow. The air grew thick with humiliation. Leo felt his ears burn. He swallowed the bitter lump in his throat and simply nodded, lowering his gaze to his worn boots. The urge to respond, to speak, to assert himself was a burning coal in his chest, but he knew better. He pushed his cart away, the squeak of the wheels a painful soundtrack to his shame, and left. He couldn't bring himself to look at the people who were laughing, or those who simply turned away in silent complicity. That same afternoon, a different kind of observation was taking place. A woman named Sophia Vance, the head of product design, had been working late. She was a quiet woman with an almost unnerving attention to detail, a trait that had made her indispensable at Argotech. She had stayed behind to fix a bug in a visual interface that had been nagging her all day. The problem was a strange, almost imperceptible visual lag, a microstutter that defied all her attempts to diagnose it. She had been staring at lines of code for hours, the cool glow of the monitor illuminating her frustrated face. She heard a faint click behind her. Leo, on his rounds, had entered the office. He didn't see her. He was focused on his work, wiping down the whiteboard on the far wall. Suddenly, she heard a soft, almost imperceptible hum coming from his side of the room. He had a small, hand-held device she had never seen before. Sophia watched, captivated, as he ran the device along the wall. The device, she realized, was scanning the wireless signals in the office. He was looking for signal interference, but it was what happened next that froze her in place. He paused near her desk and glanced at her monitor, his eyes flicking over the code. Without a word, he opened a small, beat-up notebook, wrote something down, and then, with a careful flick of his wrist, he seemed to tap a specific spot on the whiteboard. The soft, rhythmic hum from his device stopped. He then turned and continued his work, oblivious to her presence. The whole thing took less than 20 seconds. She was stunned. How could a janitor, a man who had no business with code, have a device that could detect wireless interference? And how could he have analyzed her complex code and pinpointed the issue with such unnerving speed? A moment of pure, unadulterated curiosity took hold of her. She looked at her screen again, at the code he had briefly glanced at, and then she noticed it. A single line of comments he had scrawled in the corner of her whiteboard. It read, Line 245, Memory Leak, Network Packets. She scrolled to line 245 of her code, a small, almost invisible mistake in the caching of network data. It was exactly what she had been looking for. The contrast between his image and his reality hit her like a physical blow. The quiet, humble janitor she had seen 100 times was not just cleaning up crumbs. He was debugging problems that even her most senior engineers couldn't see. The next day, Sophia was waiting for him at the service elevator. Her heart was beating with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. She wanted to ask him a million questions, but she started with a simple, quiet one. "I saw what you did yesterday," she began, her voice soft. Leo looked at her, his expression a mask of confusion. "Your note on the whiteboard," she clarified. "It was brilliant. How did you know?" Leo's shoulders slumped. He expected a lecture, a stern warning for touching something he wasn't supposed to, but her voice was genuinely respectful, full of curiosity. He took a deep breath. I just look at things differently, I guess," he said, his voice a low murmur. He told her about his late nights, about the old laptops he fixed for a few dollars, about the algorithms he studied in his tiny apartment. He told her about his father, a brilliant mechanic who had taught him to see the inner workings of things, to understand systems, to find the one small broken part that made everything else fail. "He always told me to see what was hidden, not what was shown," Leo said, his eyes distant. "He was a great man. He died before he could see me finish what I promised him." The emotion in his voice was raw, honest, and it solidified Sophia's respect for him. He wasn't just a smart guy. He was a man driven by a profound promise. 2 days later, Sophia found him again, this time with a proposal. A critical client presentation was in 2 hours, and the main server had gone down, crippled by a bizarre network issue that no one could fix. "They're saying it's a hardware failure," she said, her voice tight. "But I think it's a software problem, something no one can see." She looked him in the eye. "I need your help. Can you find the unseen problem?" Fear flashed in Leo's eyes. The memory of Marcus's cruel laughter was still fresh. What if he failed? What if they laughed again? He could feel the knot of doubt in his stomach, but then he thought of his father's words and the promise he had made. He took a shaky breath. "I'll try," he said, and his voice was steadier this time. The server room was a cold, humming temple of technology. Leo stepped in, his worn boots a stark contrast to the sterile, gleaming white floor. He knelt beside the humming server rack, his small, battered notebook open in his hand. He wasn't running diagnostics or using fancy tools. He was simply listening to the hum of the fans, the quiet clicks of the hard drives, the rhythm of the power supply. He looked at the endless lines of data on a monitor, his eyes moving with an almost preternatural speed. His fingers traced patterns in the air, connecting a series of seemingly random errors into a coherent, logical path. Sophia, watching him, felt a sense of awe. He wasn't a janitor. He was an artist. After 10 minutes, he stood up. "It's a corrupted firmware patch," he announced calmly. "It's creating a feedback loop in the network. I can fix it." He worked with a quiet intensity, his fingers flying over the keyboard, and within minutes, the server lights blinked back to life. The whole room felt like it was holding its breath. One of the junior engineers who had been standing there, looking on with skepticism, whispered to his colleague, "I didn't know you could even do that." Leo had become indispensable. Sophia didn't waste a moment. She went straight to the CEO and explained everything. A week later, Leo was offered a new role, senior systems analyst. He was scared. "I don't have a degree," he confessed to Sophia. "I don't have the right papers." She smiled warmly. "The results speak for themselves, Leo, not the labels." The anxiety pounded in his chest, a loud drum of imposter syndrome, but he took the leap anyway. The whispers started immediately. They hired him for a quota. He'll fail soon enough. Just a publicity stunt. He heard it all. He saw the condescending smiles, the invitations that were accidentally forgotten. He even saw Marcus Thorne in the hallway, whose smug expression turned to a sneer. Leo felt the familiar knot in his throat, but he didn't respond. He just worked. He fixed the bugs no one else could, streamlined the processes that everyone thought were just how things were, and quietly, methodically, he saved project after project. Soon, even the cynics began to ask for his advice. With time, Leo became an informal center of power. New hires and old veterans alike came to him for guidance. He listened, he protected his team, and he mentored them. Where they had once whispered about his place, they now repeated his words like a mantra. He never changed who he was. No loud gestures, no bragging, just a quiet confidence that was hard-earned. Inspired by his journey, Sophia launched a new initiative, See the Unseen. The program was designed to mentor and train people from non-traditional backgrounds to break down old prejudices. Leo became the face of the initiative, hosting the first open sessions where quiet employees shared their own hidden talents. The culmination came at the annual all-hands meeting, a vast, impersonal auditorium filled with the very people who had once ignored him. Leo stood on the stage, the lights bright, the air thick with anticipation. He told his story, his voice calm, but with a fire in his eyes. When they laughed at me, I worked, he said. When they dismissed me, I worked. Today, I'm here to tell you that we will no longer be silent. We will not be invisible. The audience was silent for a moment, then erupted in applause. Many stood, and Leo saw tears in the eyes of some of the people who had once turned away. Then came the fall of his antagonist. Marcus Thorne, his project failing due to a critical and unaddressed bug, was exposed for having ignored several warnings from his team. His recklessness was laid bare, and his public apology to the company was a humiliating spectacle. Justice was served, not by Leo's hand, but by his own work and integrity. The change became permanent. A small plaque was placed by the entrance of the new See the Unseen training room, bearing Leo's name. In the lobby, an old, scuffed name badge, the one he had worn for years, was placed in a glass cube, a silent monument to the person they had overlooked. Visitors would take photos, sharing their own stories of being unseen. Late that evening, in the quiet, empty office, Leo held the worn-out badge in his hand. The city lights twinkled outside the window. He whispered, more to himself than anyone, "May those still in the shadows be seen a little sooner." In the glass, his reflection shimmered, a quiet, warm, and victorious light. Talent knows no uniform, no skin color, no gender. Remember this story, so that one day you won't pass by those who are still invisible.